All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are on the lesson comparing yourself to others. So let's talk a little bit about, again, what we call compare and despair, right? Because anytime we really compare ourselves, no good is coming from it, or it's not coming from a good place, either or, right? So when you compare yourself, it's really comparison is a defense mechanism in most cases, right? So let's talk about what I mean by that. So comparing yourself can seem innocent, right? Like sometimes we compare ourselves just to get a baseline feel for where we are in comparison to our peers, to other people, to kind of see if we're on track. And that's one thing. And that's not really what I'm talking about here. But I would still question, why do you need to compare yourself to where they are versus where you want to be, right? Like trailblazers and confident women aren't looking at what other people are doing or what everybody else is doing. They are creating their own pathways, they are making their own moves based on what they desire, right? And so when we compare ourselves to others, generally speaking, and in most cases, the outcome isn't good, right? And so we compare ourselves in a number of ways. It kind of turns up differently, I've found, depending on what region of the country you're from or like your family makeup. So one of the ways is kind of like Southern judgment, which is we don't really talk about it. It's a little more passive aggressive, but it's still a comparison or like a snide or what have you to where you are in comparison to where other people might be. Another way people compare themselves is those people you know that are downright arrogant, right? Like you can just tell that they give this kind of aura of, I think I'm better than you, right? And I just want you to know that arrogance isn't confidence. And in fact, arrogance is the opposite of confidence. So keep that in mind. And then there's those people who I would probably put myself in this category who compare themselves to others with some level of judgment, but it's under the guise of it's just being competitive. Like, right, I'm just a competitive person. But competitiveness is a spirit of like good, wanting the best for everybody, wanting to be the best for yourself, wanting to compete in that way. It doesn't include the egotistical part of, oh, I'm better than you, right? So just watch and keep those in mind. Now, why is any of this important when it comes to your career? So let's talk about the role of comparison. So, what happens when we compare ourselves to other people? So, when you compare yourself, you ultimately end up in despair, meaning you feel bad about yourself, like you're behind or you're not good enough, right? So if I'm comparing myself to Janet, and Janet is been at the company as long as I have, we have the same qualifications, but let's say she got the last promotion and I didn't. Now I'm comparing myself from the place of, well, what's wrong with me? Why did she get it and I didn't? And I'm asking myself all of these questions, but none of these questions matter in the grand scheme of things. The only use they have is making me feel bad. And that's not what we're going for, because when we have or get into these negative tailspins, you can't kind of see me twisting my hands here, but when you get into those, it's hard to course correct or redirect yourself and get out of those. And it just leaves you playing small. It leaves you hiding. It leaves you questioning and self doubt, right? So it's doing the opposite of what you want, which is showing up, being confident, being the great career woman that you know that you can be, right? The second thing is, when you compare yourself to others, you can also create a false sense of self, right? And you're doing that by judging other people, right? Or looking your nose down in order to make you feel better, right? So if I look my nose down at them, if I compare myself and I'm better than them and they are worse, then I feel better about myself. But when you build the basis for who you are in your career from that place, from that external validation, you will always need it to feel good about yourself. You feel me? So keep that in mind. And then Comparing yourself to what others have or where they are in their career, which I've already talked a little bit about, it's also a distraction though, right? So while you're worried about Sally, Jane, Tom, whomever, right? That time you're spending is taking away from you building up your strengths, from you thinking about who you are like deep to your core and in the inside and what you really want. Maybe you don't really want what they have or what you think they have. Maybe this isn't the path or the right team for you, but you can't get to the heart of any of that because you're too busy focused on what everyone else has instead of what you want. What you want is more important. And this is how we find ourselves in a place of not knowing what we want because we spent so much time and energy focusing on what other people have, what we've been told to do, that we're missing or we don't listen to ourselves, right? Because sometimes ourselves tells us things that contradict what we have always been told, right? And so we kind of question, well, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, or I can't do that because. And so I want you to just be thoughtful about the role of comparison in your when it comes to your career. What everybody else is doing, how everybody else is getting there does not matter because there's no one way to get there. And we all have to shoot our own shots, give our own like introductions and do our own thing to find our own way and be willing to do that as many times as it takes to get to where we want to go. Now, what I want you to do, as opposed to thinking about all the ways in which you are either better than somebody so that you can feel good about yourself or comparing yourself and feeling bad, is I want you to take the time to celebrate. So, this lesson is all about celebrating you and your accomplishments. As women, as career women, we tend to skip over the accomplishment or we'll celebrate our accomplishments for a day and we'll celebrate out or we will sit in our losses for a month, right? You see how we're spending our time, or we'll skip over it because we don't want people to think that we're boastful or bragging. But when bad things happen or when you don't get that promotion, how many people do you tell? How much time do you spend wallowing in it? We have to spend equally as much time as celebrating all of our wins, the small ones, the minute ones, the ones that don't matter to anybody else but you. And so for this exercise, you see here on the screen, what you're going to do is an achievement and accomplish log. And I want you to write down all of your accomplishments. They can be career or otherwise, right? Your first day at your new job, completing your degree, all the things that it took to get you to this point. These are all steps that you took, no matter where you sit in your career, that moved you one step ahead of where you was yesterday, a year ago, 2 or 3 or 5 years ago, right? So I want you to relish in this. And I want you to do your achievement and accomplish log. And then I want you to come in the Facebook group and tell us like your top 5 achievements. You can even post your log if you want. I don't mind, right? We want to celebrate with you because we are here to support each other. So I'll see you in the Facebook group and I look forward to hearing all about your accomplishments. See you soon.